body and grinding down the
we'll start with this. Well, it appears Miss Great Britain, Natasha Jonas, is set to make her ring return this weekend. An impromptu fight that I was not expecting. She's been added to the November 20th boxer lineup, standing in for Caroline Dubois, amateur standout Caroline Dubois, who has fallen ill. She's not going to be able to fight, but we're going to get to see Natasha instead.
I ain't complaining.
She was quoted as saying, "I want to be challenging for world titles next year, and next weekend's fight is the first step on that journey. I'm really happy to be signed to Boxer and Sky Sports and make my first appearance so quickly. The best is yet to come." I don't know at this time who it is that Natasha is going to be fighting because the whole thing seems impromptu. A little over a week ago, I didn't even know she was going to be fighting on the 20th, though I can only imagine that this is a keep busy kind of fight, maintenance kind of fight, to keep the tools sharp and get Natasha out there before this year is out so that when next year
gets here,
she's primed and she's sharp. She won't be coming off some lengthy stint of inactivity going into what could be a much bigger fight than this one. I mean, we see what inactivity did to Terry Harper. You're lying to yourself if you think all that time off didn't affect her. It most certainly did. And Natasha's talking about fighting for belts at some point next year, though I don't think they're the belts at 140 pounds she's talking about, because the four-woman tournament is already underway, and the second leg of it is supposed to go down this Friday when Kaylee Reis faces Jessica Camara for her WBA and the vacant WBO titles. All of that is happening on Matchroom, so I don't think Natasha's talking about those titles. She already fought Katie for hers, and Katie fights exclusively on Matchroom and DAZN.
So I don't think she's talking about those titles either.
I don't think she's talking about the titles at 140. I don't think she's talking about the titles at 135 pounds. My best guess is that she might be setting her sights on at least one of the titles at 130 pounds, because we know what Eddie Hearn's two-fight plan is. His two-fight plan for Terry Harper. He plans on getting Terry Harper out there once. Early next year, then going into an Alicia Baumgartner rematch. And if that's the way it goes down, where does that leave Hyun Mi Choi? I'll tell you where it leaves her. It leaves her in limbo, and perhaps available to field offers from Boxer and Sky to have Natasha fight Hyun Mi Choi for that WBA title. As it stands, that's the only title and the only champion that looks to be available for Natasha to fight. If Eddie's plan is to have Terry box in a 10-rounder against some girl, have Alicia take care of her mandatory,
well, that leaves Hyun Mi Choi in limbo.
And if she's in limbo, who's to say that Boxer, Ben Shalom, and Sky don't make Hyun Mi Choi an offer she can't refuse? Whoever it is Natasha's fighting this weekend, I don't imagine it's a killer. I imagine it's a keep busy fight to prepare her for just such an opportunity next year. Now, in reference to this weekend's action, it's set to go down on the undercard of Andrade versus Quigley. Andrade, who I anticipate will cruise to a points decision against Jason Quigley. Kaylee Reis versus Jessica Camara. What do I think about this fight? That is the second leg of the four-woman tournament at 140 pounds to crown an undisputed champion at some point next year. There's not much discrepancy in the fighters' ages or their activity level. Kaylee's 2 years older than Jessica, 35 to 33 years old.
There's not much of a discrepancy there.
Though there is a noticeable discrepancy in the fighters' experience level. Kaylee Reis has been around for years.
She's boxed some of the very best boxers out there.
Boxed some of the very best boxers out there at higher weights than 140 pounds. Kaylee Reis dropping down to 140 is a relatively recent development. Kaylee Reis has fought as high as junior middleweight and middleweight.
She's the naturally bigger woman.
And I'd wager she's the naturally heavier-handed puncher. Jessica Kamara is a good boxer, good polished skill and technique, but she's not heavy-handed. She's a good fighter, though I don't think she's as experienced, anywhere near as experienced as Kaylee Reis, or anywhere near as durable. Kaylee Reis has never been stopped.
26 professional contests.
This will be the 27th. She may have suffered a setback here and there, but one thing she never suffered was a knockout loss, whereas Jessica Kamara,
She
was knocked out in the third round of her 2018 contest with Natalie Brown. I think that Kaylee, comparatively, is the naturally bigger fighter, the heavier-handed fighter, and the more durable fighter. Also, the more experienced fighter. It's the funniest thing because the last time these two girls were in action, comparatively, Jessica looked better than Kaylee. She did. Jessica looked better boxing Heather Hardy than Kaylee did boxing Deanna Prozac. The difference being that...
Well, Jessica was boxing a blown-up featherweight coming off a loss.
And inactivity, whereas Deanna Prozac, she was coming off a win ahead of that Kaylee Reis fight, where Kaylee didn't look her best, and I feel like that was the necessary wake-up call for Kaylee.
It's time to switch one.
Bring her A game, her best game, the kind of game that she brought to that Cecilia Brækhus fight, where she saw herself dropping Cecilia Brækhus for the first time in Cecilia's career. Kaylee knows what's on the line here, and this is the kind of opportunity that she's worked towards for her entire career, which began
13 years ago in 2008.
a blown-up inactive featherweight in Heather Hardy might have struggled with Jessica Kamara's clean boxing, movement, jab, but I don't think Kaylee's going to have that problem because Kaylee, comparatively, is a bigger, more durable, more experienced fighter that has more ways of going about fighting a fight. Kaylee can equally play the aggressor and the defender in this situation with Jessica Kamara. I think if Jessica's got anything working for her in this fight, it's that she's the fresher fighter, perhaps less war-torn. I think she's got speed on her side. I do think she's got comparatively faster hands than Kaylee, though given Kaylee's size, I think she's going to punch with intent. I think she's going to go in there,
Use her size on Jessica.
slip and roll some of those light jabs to land heavy leather up top, downstairs.
Forcing the action.
Force Jessica to trade. Force the exchanges, the way she did with Cecilia Brækhus when she dropped her off a counter right hand, slipping off to her left, angling off to deliver that big right. I think Kaylee's size is going to be a factor here. Her size, her durability, her experience. I think that might be enough to see Kaylee Reis cruise to a points decision and make it into the last leg of the four-woman tournament at 140 pounds that could see Kaylee, if this prediction sticks, squaring off against Chantel Cameron sometime next year. As experienced as Kaylee Reis already is, it feels a lot like she's hit her stride and she's finally coming into her own. Everything is coming together, as it were, for her to fight on the biggest stage she's ever fought on with the most on the line. I think Kaylee knows that. And I think Kaylee realizes she has to make it past Jessica Kamara this weekend because she has bigger fish to fry. In other news, the fallout continues as a result of Canelo Alvarez's decision to move up to cruiserweight and challenge reigning WBC cruiserweight champion Lunga Makabu for his title. Antonio Tarver, former world champion Antonio Tarver, took to his social media and stated, "All the Canelo fans have been trolling me because of my comments about him moving up to fight a nondescript cruiserweight and having a fighter that has barely fought on TV being thrust onto a massive stage. I'll be doing Tarver's take on why this could be the biggest duck in boxing, disguised as an attempt to become a 5-division champion."
How many times had Alicia Baumgartner fought on TV before she knocked out Terry Harper?
How many times did Mauricio Lara fight on TV before he flew over to the United Kingdom and knocked out Josh Warrington? Former unified junior middleweight champion
J-Rock
Julian Williams of Philadelphia was very recently in action against Vladimir Hernandez, and comparatively, Julian's fought on TV more times than Vladimir, but it was Vladimir that won the fight. It was Vladimir that was awarded the decision. The same applies to Jamal James and Butaev, who just beat him. Comparatively, Jamal James has fought on TV more times than Butaev, but it was Butaev that won the fight. So it's clear that the amount of times you fight on TV don't determine the outcome of a fight, and it don't determine whether or not you're a good fighter, a good enough fighter. And every single fight in the sport of boxing carries its own relative air of spontaneity. If Antonio Tarver is interpreting this massive jump upstairs to the cruiserweight division for Lunga Makabu as the biggest duck in boxing, what does Antonio call...
What did he say when Jermall Charlo swerved Demetrius Andre?
What did he say when he swerved his own stablemate who fights on the same side of the street as him, same promotional banner, same platform? What did he say when Jermall swerved David Benavidez?
Where was the outcry?
Where was the outrage? If Canelo, fighting a naturally bigger guy than himself and Jermall and David and all these other guys that everybody's caping for, if that's supposed to be interpreted as a duck...
How does Antonio interpret what Jamal's been doing?
I gotta straight talk this. I got no other choice. These guys think that because they're American, They're special. Even when their resumes are paper thin, just as paper thin as...
Just as paper thin as a foreign fighter's resume.
They think that because they're American, they're better fighters by default. They think that because they're American or American-based fighters, they're special fighters.
You're not fucking special.
And that's where you fucked up at. That's where you're fucking up. You think that these guys are special. No, these guys ain't special. Canelo's the special one. That's why they're all after him, and he can care less about them. That's why he has the audience, and they don't.
Oh, this is the biggest duck in boxing disguised as an attempt to become a 5-division champion.
No, what this is an American bias disguised as a plea for the best to fight the best. If you think that Jermall Charlo is one of the best guys out there, and Demetrius Andrade and David Benavidez, why don't you keep the same energy for them? Why aren't you advocating that they fight each other? There are no network politics and promotional issues between David and Jermall, but you're not advocating for those two guys to fight each other. What you're advocating for is for Canelo Alvarez to fight 8 fucking people that refuse to fight each other because they're all waiting for him.
But you wanted to see the best fight the best.
You know the reason that Jermall Charlo ain't got the marquee value of a Canelo Alvarez and David Benavidez? Fighters like them. The reason they don't have the marquee value of a Canelo is because they're focused on the wrong fucking thing. You want to use his fans and the empire that he built to finance your retirement fund instead of focusing on building your own empire, your own legacy, so you have your own fans to where you ain't got a sponge off of him.
And in order to get there, you gotta fight the fucking fight.
Can't stress that enough. Playing it safe and fighting no-hopers while you sit on your hands and wait for Canelo, that won't do. And it's not fooling anybody. It's not fooling the fight fans because most of the fight fans, they pay to see Canelo, but they don't pay to see you. And that's what the numbers show. The numbers themselves, they don't lie. They won't lie for you, and they won't
lie for any of you fucks.
Jermall Charlo's the same fucking age as Canelo Alvarez, but you tell me who's done more in their pro career. You tell me.
They offered him $7 million to fight Demetrius Andrade.
$7 million that he would have got win or lose, and you want Joe Blows like me to feel sorry for him while he passes up those opportunities.
Fuck that shit.
You got old guys drinking coffee from the corner store and old ladies playing scratch-offs on the counter.
Hey, Ray.
They don't bump into $7 million the way that Jermall could have if he would have found his fucking balls, and you want us to pity him?
Fuck him.
And where do you get that these guys from 160, 168, and 175 are better fighters than Lunga Makabu? I don't know with any certainty that Jermall Charlo could go the distance with a Lunga Makabu when Jermall Charlo couldn't put away a Juan Montiel. If you can't knock out that kind of guy, what the hell would happen to you up there at cruiserweight? They'd walk through your punches and take you out. That's what would happen.
Why didn't he fight Breeders?
Oh, you're mad. You're so fucking mad that he's choosing to fight Lunga instead of Breeders. He's not fighting Breeders. Oh, my God. Hey, I got a fucking question. Take Canelo out of the equation. If it were Breeders that wanted to fight Lunga Makabu and that fight got made, would you still trash Lunga?
Would have been a unification fight.
If it were Maris Breeders or Lorenzo Coley or Arslan Goulamarian that chose to fight that same Lunga Makabu that Canelo's fighting, would you criticize them for fighting him the way you're criticizing Canelo? Yeah, forget those guys. You guys are content watching Jermall Charlo fight Brandon Adams and Juan Montiel. Well, if he chose to fight Lunga Makabu, if David Benavidez chose to fight that same Lunga Makabu, would you still discredit him, or would you say David's got guts going up there for fighting a goddamn cruiserweight? I know, you want me to believe that Jermall's this great fucking fighter. He's such a great fucking fighter. Oh my God, that's why he couldn't knock out Juan Montiel, I suppose, because of how great a fucking fighter he is. David Benavidez, you want me to look at David as a bigger threat to Canelo than Lunga, but isn't David the guy that got dropped by Ronald Gavril?
If Lunga landed the way that Ronald landed, would David get up?
So let's just cut the fucking crap, alright? And finally, in welterweight news, Danny Garcia says, I feel like I'm better than everybody at 154.
Even though he didn't prove he's better than everybody at 147.
He was quoted as saying, I want to become a 3-division world champion. That's my dream. Everybody's saying don't go up to 154, but you gotta understand all the greats went up in weight. If Garcia makes the move 7 pounds north, he'll be met with a slew of top-level contenders and world champions, in spite of sharing a division with the likes of unified champion Jermall Charlo, WBO belt holder Brian Castaño, and highly ranked contenders Erickson Lubin and Tim Tszyu. Garcia is unbelievably confident that he'll accomplish his dream of becoming a 3-division world champion. I would like to fight anybody at 154.
He didn't even fight everybody at 147.
Danny Garcia was not a particularly big welterweight. And because he wasn't a particularly big welterweight, you have to wonder, is it that he outgrew the division or that he grew tired of having to make the weight.
I think it's the latter more than the former.
An undisciplined guy lacking a lot of competitive drive with a lot of time on his hands, a guy that sat out all of this year, wasn't in action.
He sat out the whole year.
When you're idle for that amount of time, you might lose your competitive drive. You might lose that fire in your belly that keeps you sharp and keeps you motivated.
You might.
When you're idle for that amount of time, what it might keep you is in front of the fridge.
He's leaving 147 without fighting Terrence Crawford.
Having lost to Keith Thurman and Sean Porter and Errol Spence Jr. more recently, though not all that recent, it's been close to a year's time since Danny fought anybody. Danny Garcia didn't prove that he's the best welterweight out there or one of the best welterweights out there. The only victories he amassed in this division were against guys that weren't that solid there. Ivan Redkach, Adrian Granados, Samuel Vargas. And I reiterate, Danny's not a big guy with a big frame to where he may have outgrown the welterweight division. I don't think so. What I think has happened is he's grown tired of making the welterweight limit, so he's going to hide out up there at 154 pounds. I don't actually know if they're going to put him in there with Jermell Charlo. If they do, I don't like his chances. I don't like his chances at all. The same applies to Brian Castaño. Even a Tim Tszyu fight, to me, seems like Danny would be biting off more than he could chew because he wasn't that big a puncher at 147 pounds with those guys, so what's he gonna be at 154 pounds?
I mean, if he wants to challenge Jermell, then great.
Then I get to watch Jermell Charlo knock him out. If he wants to fight Brian Castaño, the same applies, but that's the thing. Is Danny Garcia really moving up to challenge those guys, or is he gonna sit up there, bide his time, and wait for those guys to move up so that he can pick up a vacant title? It's the way he left the division, leaving behind that unfinished business. I mean, if he doesn't want to waste his time on Jaron Boots Ennis or Virgil Ortiz, two very promising up-and-comers that have yet to establish themselves, I can understand that. But he's also leaving the division having not fought Terrence Crawford, who is established, who is going to be in action this weekend on pay-per-view against Danny's stablemate and former opponent, Sean Porter. Danny leaving the division having not fought that guy.
So you're willing to try your luck with Jermell, but you don't want to know with Terrence.
You're willing to try your luck with Argentina's own WBO champion, Brian Castaño, but when it comes to Terrence, you just don't want to know. I mean, it is what it is. That's how it breaks down, though. I'll say this much. I'm not against Canelo Alvarez moving up to cruiserweight to fight Lunga Makabu, so I'm surely not going to be against Danny Garcia moving up to take on Jermell Charlo or Brian Castaño. If he thinks he's got it in him to win those fights, I'll tune in and I'll watch him get knocked out, because that's what'll happen.
He's gonna get knocked the fuck out.
Fucking around up there with those guys, you're gonna get fucking knocked out. You got itty-bitty Danny. Can't squeeze into 147 anymore, but at 154, you got guys 5'10", 5'11". Some guys are 6 feet tall. At least one guy's bigger than that, Sebastian Fundoria. You got these huge guys that are squeezing in at 154. And Danny thinks he can mingle with those guys.
He's gonna get knocked the fuck out.
Fucking around up there with those guys, you're gonna get fucking knocked out. If I'm off base, what's your prediction? You like Danny's chances against Jermell Charlo? You like his chances against Brian Castaño? Well, that makes one of us.